Perspective is a tricky thing because the perspective you have of the world becomes evidence of itself. If you have a negative perspective, you begin to see all the negative things, all the ways that it could go wrong, it has gone wrong, it will go wrong. That perspective that you have begins to skew all of the evidence in favour of itself. So it doesn't matter whether you believe negatively or positively. That same methodology applies. If you think that the world is unfair, you will find all of the evidence to prove that. If you think that everyone is against you, or that nobody likes you, you will find the evidence to prove that. When we are looking to change our perspective, let's say, in theory, that we know the world is not against us, but that's a belief that we have. That's our perspective that we currently operate out of. We expect the evidence to change our perspective. So we expect good things to happen. We expect that to then change our perspective, that good things are possible. But it rarely works like this. Often, the perspective is the first thing that needs to change. And this is why people who have done the work or done enough of the work to know what I'm saying to be true, realize that you do sort of have to fake it till you make it. And that's not fake it as in make up a load of crap that you don't believe, or keep telling yourself that everything is perfect and that, the world is sunshine and roses, because that's never a perspective that is going to stick. You may even convince yourself that you are a realist and that you see things for what they truly are. But now, with what we know about perspective, we can see that realism is tainted by this lens of perspective. So whatever unconscious bias that you may have, realism then begins to mould towards that. You will see, especially with all things magical, spiritual, religious, they require some belief, some faith up front in order to start becoming visible. You have to believe that there is something supernatural, is not a great word for it, but something magical about the universe in order to begin to see the magic. And then you start seeing these little things. I was driving the other day, and it was one time that I was particularly in a rush, and every time I go down this road, red light, red light, red light, stuck at each red light for about 20 minutes, it feels like. And if I could have had a negative view, I could have thought, every day I get stuck down this road, I'm going to get stuck down this road. And this thought popped into my head, where it's going to be okay. It's not going to be like that this time. And I held it. I didn't judge it. I didn't latch onto it. I just had the thought, and I let it develop magically. There was one green light, and then another green light. And all of a sudden, every light that I hit was green. And, there's no big statement at the end of it. It's just, wow, that was magical. And, you can quite clearly see, anyone can say, well, it was just coincidental. The lights were going to be green anyway. It doesn't matter what you think, those lights were going to be green because that was the right timing for them to be so. And if that's the perspective you wish to take, you are more than welcome to do so. But I believe that it was magical. And the more I believe in the magical and mystical and wonders of the world, the more they are uncovered for me. The more I see just how magical it is. And it becomes evidential of itself. And the same for things that are negative. The more I catch myself thinking, before even going into a situation, that it's going to be bad, that it's not going to be what I want it to be, it's not going to be this, it's not going to be that, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And then it happens. And funnily enough, that doesn't feel like magic. That feels unfair. That feels like sod's law. That feels like all of this kind of stuff, where it feels like I was right and I knew it was going to be bad and it was bad, and, props to me for getting it right about how wrong it all is. But that is the very same magic that makes everything appear so wonderful. And if you really sit with that for a minute, you will feel just how contradictory that feels. It's like the same thing that makes everything feel so magic is the same thing that makes everything feel so terrible, make it feel so predictable. And maybe it's predictable because your predictions are making it. They are bringing the reality. Your predictions are speaking spells into reality, where you are saying what's going to happen and it happens. And if that isn't magic, I don't know what is. People have known this for, hundreds, thousands of years. I don't know the exact timeline, but we have sort of lost touch with the intimacy of language, of understanding its importance. And we sort of don't really pick our words very carefully. We're very incautious. And we can sort of see with the Latin languages, especially, that's what I'm familiar with anyway. I don't really know about the other languages, whether they're like this, but especially English. So many words have ulterior meanings. One that my friend says to me very often is about bless you. That's something that we say in good spirits, we want to say, like, if someone sneezes, we're saying, like, bless you, I received that something happened to you, and I'm just acknowledging that and saying, like, I'm here, I acknowledge that. Or even if you mean it in a term of endearment, where you say, I bless you for being you, is a blessing. It's meant to be taken as magic, as nice, as positive. But if you listen to the phonics of the word, if you really listen, bless, it sounds like be less. It doesn't sound like something that's magically rooted. It doesn't sound like something that is uplifting and positive, only because the connotations of the word carry it in that direction. But it sounds like something negative. Be less. Be less. And, that might be just a silly example, but I promise you, if you look at all the words that you use on a common day basis, you will find thousands of examples of where the words are designed to trick you up. It's sort of like Aladdin, where, he gets the wishes from the genie and he's making wishes, and that little grammatical difference is going to throw off what actually he gets as a part of the wish. Well, there's some cicada absolutely screaming his little heads off. And yeah, these wishes that you get, you might say, oh, I wish to be big. And then suddenly you're 90 feet tall and you go, well, that's not what I wanted, but that's what you said. And the universe, it does speak this mystical language. And you really have to understand what you're saying and the importance of what you're saying. And this helps your perspective, because you might be frustrated that things aren't happening for you, or you're trying to alter your perspective, but you haven't modified the language that you use. So even when you say things, maybe you're saying something and you believe it to be positive. You think you're saying something nice, like, oh, I hope that it's going to be good this time. That's not a positive phrase. That's like it's almost like underlined by the fact that you expect it to not be like that, and you're crossing your fingers and praying that it's going to be different. And it may seem like a very subtle difference, but subtlety is the language of magic. A lot of magic is subtle. It's not obvious. It's not overt. That is why it's magic. Because only the initiated, only the people that are willing to sit there and look at it and appreciate it are going to recognize it. So in these words that you use, it becomes important. It's all important. But I feel like language is an expression of perspective, and perspective is almost like a pattern of thoughts where everything goes through this central funnel of what you've previously thought. And that is your perspective, which is also your ego. And your ego is your current perspective. They are one in the same thing. So, in order to change, you need a fundamental change of perspective. And that change of perspective must come first. And if you feel like nothing is changing, that you're stuck, that you keep seeing the same things, that the same things keep happening, you're butting heads against the wall and not getting any further, then there is some truth, some wisdom, something maybe subtle, maybe obvious, that is there, that is telling you that you are refusing to accept. And you may think, well, I keep doing the same thing, I keep trying, I keep fighting, and you haven't given yourself a chance to see it from another perspective. It's sort of like those mirages, or not a mirage, don't know what you'd call it. It's sort of like the 4D art illusion, where if you look at it head on, you know, you might see a completely different shape. You might see an elephant tusk. But if you look to the right, you suddenly see a door of a house and it looks completely different. And that is the perfect representation of the illusions of life. That sometimes you're just going forwards and backwards between the same things with the same information, making the same decisions. And the root cause, the root thing that you're operating from hasn't changed. So even though you're making all of these surface level changes, if that ego hasn't changed, if that perspective hasn't changed, then you haven't changed. Not you, fundamentally you. All that's changed is some stuff that you're doing. You know, maybe you've unpicked loads, maybe you've changed lots about you, and you're making different decisions, and you are making harder decisions or whatever. You know, you've changed friends, you've changed life, you've changed job, and you think, well, I'm doing all of this stuff. Why isn't it different? Because you are still the same. You are still operating from the same modality. You are still existing within the same framing. And I know how frustrating that could be to hear, because I know if I'd have heard that a long time ago, I would have thought, no, I'm changing, I'm doing all these things differently. I would have got defensive, and I would have only admitted to the fact that I had changed some pieces, that, you know, I changed a lot about myself and that I do loads more different things, and put up all of these defenses without acknowledging, actually, I still feel like the same person. I still feel like that person that lets people down or is not enough. I still feel like that person that needs to be something or be of use in order to feel like enough. I still felt like that person. And it didn't matter what I did on the outside. It didn't matter, you know, how many things I did differently. Because the root of it, my ego at the time, my perspective was that I wasn't enough. And nothing I did externally could change that feeling. The only thing that could change that was a change of perspective. And then comes the real difficulty, because it can be a catch-22, where in order to change perspective, you have to change some external things. You have to change some decisions that you're making about yourself. And, you know, maybe it's not a one or the other. It becomes a bit more of a chicken and the egg scenario, where they actually both have to come first. Where you have to change bits and pieces of the internal and the external at the same time. And to know that it's not a race, that you don't need to change, for instance. That's a mad one as well. Because, well, you think, well, you've just said all these things that I have to change. But, you know, how can you say that there's nothing that needs to change? Because perspective isn't something. It's not something physical. It's not something tangible. It's something that you created and that needs to be let go of. Maybe you have already changed and done all the things that you need to do, but you haven't let go of that old identity, that old perspective. You still think badly about yourself. You still think into your old patterns and your old beliefs, and you still feel controlled by them. You still carry around this baggage. And I know that I felt like I was carrying, it felt like when I was walking and making all these changes and trying to be better and trying to do more, that I had my old ego, my old self literally dying and grabbing onto my heels and not letting me go. And I felt like I was dragging them. And integration is a difficult thing because you feel, or you may feel, like that old you is bad. That's something you don't want to be anymore. You condemn it. You hate it. You don't like it. You don't want to be that anymore. But the deeper you look, the more you realize that they just want some love. That's all they've ever wanted. They just wanted to have their needs met. You know, they're not a bad person for feeling self-conscious, for taking on those bullies' words, or for taking on what the world taught them, that they weren't enough, that, you know, they were useless or no good, or that nobody loves them. They're not bad for that. That was just something they learned. And now you're just one other person that's telling them that. That's telling them they're no good. That's telling them that they're stupid for thinking that way. That's telling them that you just want to get rid of them. You don't want them around. That they're a bad part of you, a negative part of you, and you just wish they were dead or gone. And that's not the truth. The truth is that they are a part of you, and a part of you that needs love, that needs attention, that doesn't really require severance. It requires integrating into the whole, to understand where those needs come from, and to make those parts of you whole, so that you feel like you're enough, so you know that you're enough, because you're all together. And you may have these human feelings of embarrassment or shame or guilt, or, you know, wanting love or wanting attention. And those aren't bad things. That doesn't make you bad or weak or pathetic. It makes you human. And that we all want love. We all want people to appreciate us. We all want attention. We all want to coexist in a world where we are wanted. And you're not bad for being wanted, and neither is those parts of you. So, again, it's less about severance. It's less about detachment and more about integration. Thank you for listening.